Is Alex Bregman finding a new home with the Boston Red Sox the window of opportunity the Cardinals needed to deal Nolan Arenado? What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily, officially Season 5 of B-Schaeff Daily, as I am live from Jupiter, Florida, beginning a new season of Cardinals baseball coverage. Welcome in, everybody, one and all, as Cardinals camp officially got underway for pitchers and catchers on Wednesday. But this podcast, as much as I was ready to talk about some of the things that happened at camp today, and maybe I'll still be able to get to it and mix it in, we have to talk about some breaking news, because just as I was getting ready to record this evening, the news is out that Alex Bregman is heading to the Boston Red Sox on a 3-year deal for $120 million. There's opt-outs after the 25 season, after the 26 season, tons of opt-outs, tons of AAV for Alex Bregman. We don't care about any of that in St. Louis. The bottom line is he's signed, per reports, and where he's going. So he's going to the Red Sox. That was the team that we were kind of thinking, if they didn't get Alex Bregman, that they would be interested in Nolan Arenado. And, of course, Cardinals camp this morning, everybody's talking about Nolan Arenado. He's the central figure of a camp that he is not even present at this point in time, and may never be. If you want to listen to John Mozeliak, his interview from this morning, I posted that video earlier today, in which Mo, very interestingly, when asked how many teams he was able to negotiate with per the list, the infamous list for Nolan Arenado this offseason, he actually answered the question and said five teams. So this notion of, Arenado's camp coming out and saying we've expanded the list is bigger than people might think. If that's true, at least the way that Mo told it today, nobody told the Cardinals. So that's noteworthy. You could kind of sense it a little bit for John Mozeliak this morning. The fact that he answered that question just maybe tells you his frustration level with this process. And I do feel for Mo in that regard, because I know that Cardinals fans, I read my comments here on YouTube. People aren't happy with him. I've known this for a while. This isn't new, but it does probably have to get a little bit old for the guy when, at this point in the offseason, his goal has been to trade Arenado. Now, why is that his goal? Well, because the ownership said we got to cut the payroll. Okay. The best way to do that is perhaps to trade Arenado. He doesn't really want to be here anyway in terms of a rebuild, because he'd like to make every effort to win a championship during his career, and however long that window of opportunity remains to be, he's certainly still looking for that and to have success. So let's trade Arenado. Let's get a deal done with the Houston Astros. All he's got to do is approve it. Was the Astros one of the teams on the list? I guess not, obviously, because it didn't end up happening. But those other 5 teams, if I had to guess, as this process was beginning, weren't interested. They weren't looking to meet the parameters that the Cardinals had. Because remember, the whole notion behind this at the very beginning was we don't have to trade him, right? That was the way that it was sort of portrayed, even financially. It's kind of handcuffed them in terms of being able to do a lot to help the roster for this year and be able to make moves. But it's not that they are at a payroll level to where ownership, at least in the way that it's been portrayed. Because at winter warmup, Mozeliak said, he was asked, do you have to cut more, even if that means the Arenado deal doesn't happen, you're cutting elsewhere as a result? And he said, no. And even the DeWitts were asked a similar question. No, we don't necessarily need to do that. So as much as the finances are driving this, it wasn't something that they were going to start trading Helsley or trading Eric Fetty during spring training because they weren't able to get a deal done for Arenado, simply because those guys make $7.5 million, $8 million, and they've got to save somewhere. That is not the way that it is portrayed. But you do all of this because you're John Mozeliak and it's your job, and it's in the name of ownership saving money, and you get a deal done and it gets blocked by the player, and then it's like, no, we want to go to these 5 teams. We're not willing to hear this other deal for a team that has a stadium with a short porch and left where I would thrive. I think it would have been a perfect spot for him to go to Houston. He turned it down. He tried to play it both ways and said, well, I don't want to go there right now. Maybe later in the offseason, I won't close any doors. And the Astros were like, yeah, right. We're closing this door. We're gonna sign Christian Walker. We're gonna continue with our offseason, not be held hostage by a player that we wanted to trade for, but we're not good enough for him. Like, they quickly dismissed it, and rightfully so. But if you're Arenado, if you're Joel Wolfe, and you say, hey, I'm going to get the best situation for my client, we're going to get him to one of these other teams that he wants to be on, great. Like, that's the bet you make, and we'll see if it ends up happening. Arenado's still at home in Southern California. The report date for position players is fast approaching. I don't think we'll see Arenado in camp. But I also, part of that answer is because I think we're going to see a trade, especially after this being resolved with the Red Sox. I think we're going to still see a trade. I think Arenado, and look, this was reported just minutes ago by John Denton of MLB.com. I just got done playing pickleball with John Denton, and he's breaking news on us, making it happen out there in the reporting streets, but said that the Cardinals are expected to ramp up their trade talks with the New York Yankees per a source. So that's what John Denton's source is saying. And again, this could be old news by the time you listen to this podcast on Thursday morning, but we're recording it. We're getting it out there. Kind of throwback, late night B-Schaeff Daily, the way that you can expect during the regular season when we're talking about that day's games. The Yankees make a lot of sense. I still would not close the door, in my opinion. And this is not me reporting that a source has told me, but just kind of using my read of the situation and my knowledge of how these things might come to pass. I wouldn't count the Dodgers out. And I've said this on the show. The Dodgers have always struck me in this conversation as a team that's doing everything and anything all off season long. They're getting the stuff done that's germane to their roster needs, that's directly pertinent. But then you kind of can step back after a little while and go, okay, we've done all the stuff that we have to do. We've got all the needs taken care of. Maybe we go for a luxury ad because the Cardinals thought they had a team in the Red Sox that could be a match that Arenado would be willing to go to and that ostensibly needed a third baseman. I know they have Devers, but we've talked about it. They're going to move him to DH. They're going to move him to first. I guess we're going to find out. Maybe he'll play second. Or pardon me, maybe Bregman will play second now that they signed Bregman. If Devers doesn't want to move or they don't want to move him position-wise. So who knows? We don't care about that in St. Louis. The bottom line is Bregman is signed in Boston, so Arenado's not going there. However, I would say that tonight's news is tremendous news for the St. Louis Cardinals. Tremendous news for John Mozeliak because it clarifies one element of the market that had been held up. I think the Cardinals, when it comes to the Red Sox, probably would have been able to get a deal done if the Red Sox didn't get Bregman. Now, was the money going to be a perfect match for what the Cardinals wanted? Who knows? Because that's been really the storyline from the St. Louis standpoint since the Houston thing fell through. Houston was going to take on $50+ million of that contract. The Cardinals weren't going to have to pay it down a whole lot. My prediction as we sit here, and like I said, maybe it happens 6 a.m. on Thursday, and by the time you hear this podcast, it's totally wrong. My top prediction is whether it's the Dodgers or the Yankees or somebody else, a mystery guest, the Cardinals are eating more money in the deal. And I do think there will end up being a deal. Because being down here at camp, it just feels as though, in Mozeliak with the media, like braced folks with the way he talked about it. Again, go check out that video. It's on the channel. He said he didn't know. He couldn't really handicap it. Couldn't really say whether or not a trade would be able to get done. But despite the fact that he understandably, after thinking he had the deal done once, didn't want to say, yeah, it's going to happen. He said, yeah, I kind of regret talking about it the way I talked about it. I thought a deal was done. How exactly that came to fruition, and people on YouTube saying, hey, they should have asked him to expand his list. Like, I think people sometimes have a misunderstanding of the way these conversations, like, it's not like they're calling and texting every day. Mozeliak said this morning he hasn't really heard from their camp in a couple weeks. And by their camp, it's like the agents or Arenado himself, because they've been dealing with arbitration mostly. That stuff is kind of about to be wrapped up. News today, Nootbaar won his case against the Cardinals. Donovan lost his. Still pending on Palante. We'll wait and see what ends up coming from that. But like that's kind of been where some of the focus has been. Can you walk and chew gum at the same time? I guess there's an argument to be made. I'm sure people are going to make it because people are tired of Mozeliak. That's fine. I think he knows the lay of the land at this point. Fair or unfair, it is what it is. And so maybe they should have been able to focus on the Arenado stuff at the same time. But the bottom line is, honestly, Boston was going to probably present as your best chance, but you knew they were waiting on Bregman. They've known this for weeks. Well, guess what? They got Bregman. Now you can focus on other possible trade partners. But if you're the Cardinals, and it's back to my prediction, I know like 2 minutes ago I said, here's my prediction. I never really finished saying what it was. Cardinals are going to spend more money than that deal they had with Houston. They're going to have to eat more of the contract, and maybe by a significant portion. Reports that the Cardinals have been reluctant to, financially meet the ask of what some of these other teams will be happy to have Nolan Arenado. Teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers too, because they're a money pit. They don't care. They'll spend, but maybe they don't want to spend what is considered to be a riskier side of a contract. 3 years, 60 some odd million, 70 million, whatever it is. I always get confused because, well, the Rockies owe $5 million, but is that paid or whatever? I don't care. We're bottom lining this at this point. I just think that the teams know they'll have the Cardinals over a barrel. And so if you're the Dodgers, you're like, yeah, we'll always spend money. We're not going to cheap out on something if we want to do it. But at the same time, the Cardinals do not have any leverage in this because, right or wrong, it's just the whole league knows exactly what they're looking to do. Now, it's been interesting, too, to read some of the national commentary about the Cardinals. It was making the rounds yesterday. I don't remember if it was Ken Rosenthal or who it was. I was only seeing the screenshot on Twitter, so I apologize for not attributing it 100% accurately necessarily. But people basically talking about the league and other executives and other teams are confounded by what the Cardinals are doing. Like, sounds a lot like what y'all have been complaining about and saying, I don't really see a direction. I don't really see this as being a reset or a retool when you're not actually carving out the space for young players to play. This is such a big part of that, though. The Arenado thing is such a big part of that. And that's why I've said, even though Mozeliak said this morning, technically, I don't remember the exact quote, but that he expected Arenado to report to camp on time. Like, that was an easy quote to cut and paste and put it out there on social media because it is accurate. That's what he said. Having been standing there, and you can go back and watch the Mozeliak video and tell me if I am wrong in the way that I am perceiving this, but it's like he expects Arenado to be at camp because everybody's going to be at camp. He's on the team, isn't he? Like, that's sort of the vibe that Mozeliak was giving when he said he expects Arenado to report to camp on time, because it's kind of like a given. Until you hear a player's not doing that, then it's a news story. Then it's noteworthy. Then you got to deal with that. And maybe Arenado wouldn't do that in the first place. He would not hold out, because I think at that point it would become a little bit contentious with the team, and you're talking about a financial implication, right? Like, if a player doesn't report to camp when they're supposed to, get fined, right? Like, I think that's part of the dynamic. So I'm not even suggesting that that's on the table, but I just am getting the feeling that we're not going to get to that point. I think a trade could come really soon. And if I'm wrong in 3 days or whatever it is, when the players are supposed to be here, and if he's here or he's not here, I'll tell you I was wrong. But I think the Bregman thing coming to a fruition only reinforces my belief that Arenado is going to be dealt soon. And my prediction comes with the Cardinals might be eating half the remaining money, maybe more. And that's not going to be a nice reflection of the value the Cardinals got out of this deal. It's a salary dump, but it's a salary dump in which you're probably going to have to take on a significant amount of salary still just to be able to get it done. And that really misrepresents. And like, if Joel Wolf gets this done, he's the one that deserves the credit if the Arenado trade happens, because he basically, through whatever medium that it took place, it was declined. Arenado said, I don't want to go to Houston. And we all were sitting here going, dude, that might be your last shot. Like, if you're desperate to get away from the Cardinals, going to Houston was probably the move. And I still think he would have crushed with those Crawford boxes. So I think I question it from like a competitive standpoint and just like a success standpoint. He could have been great there with Houston. But they traded Kyle Tucker, and he wasn't sure what direction they were going. So while he maybe wasn't on the Astros might not have been on the 5-team list, but it might have been that a conversation was had like, hey, we might have this with the Astros. Should we pursue this? And the Cardinals pursue it because maybe they had reason to believe that they should, that it would be worth their time. But then Tucker gets traded a few days before that. Lo and behold, it was a situation where, the Astros probably just trying to clear some finances to get Arenado. Ultimately, they signed Christian Walker, and the rest is history. But that conceivably was the reason that Arenado no longer wanted to go to Houston, if he ever did in the first place. I'm not saying that I know for a fact that he would have done it. It just is like, the way that Mozeliak's demeanor has been about this whole saga since just tells you, man, he feels like, and I agree with him, but he probably feels like, and he can't say it, but the team and the front office and the Cardinals in general just kind of got screwed on the way that whole thing went down. Because you get a trade to the finish line, I just don't think you put the manpower into that trade unless you think there's a pretty good chance that it's going to get accepted. And he has since said on record that he was surprised it didn't get accepted by Arenado. Houston accepted it. They were ready. So when that's hanging over your head and the public sentiment is already against you if you're Mo, I don't blame the guy. I think he got a raw deal on this one, but there's a way to be able to at least salvage it now. Dodgers, John Denton reports Yankees is going to be a direction the Cardinals turn their attention, and I think that one makes sense. The Dodgers is not like there's a need there, right? Like I said, luxury ad. If the Cardinals eat a significant chunk of the money, the Dodgers are not going to like turn down a free or below market value Arenado. The question would be if Mo can pull off getting a decent pitching chip out of the whole thing. I think that would be a huge win. But my expectations are very, very low as far as what the Cardinals are going to be able to get player-wise. Now, maybe, even though they were reluctant at the beginning of this process to eat a bunch of money in order to get better prospects, maybe it turns into that because the teams don't want to take on the contract. That being said, I also don't think teams want to trade away their prospects. So, I don't think the Dodgers are going to suddenly go, yeah, if you pay $40 million or $45 million, we'll give you Bobby Miller. That would be crazy. They have money. Why would they? So I don't know that it's going to be an either or where you give more money, you get a better player. It might be you give more money and the deal gets done. You give more money and Gorman gets to be your third baseman and not Arenado. And from a fan standpoint, Cardinals fans should be peeved because you're I actually think Arenado is pretty good at baseball. I'd like him on my favorite team. If it was just in a vacuum, that's the way you would feel about it. But it's not in a vacuum. This is all happening contingent upon 7 other things that are going to happen. And where the Cardinals are is a place of discovery, trying to lock in on these young players. And whether you think you have a certain age in mind when you hear young, whatever, it doesn't matter. The players that are less proven, they want to give them a chance to prove that they're good or prove that they're not worth building around. They don't need to be people that get extended in the next offseason. They don't need to be building blocks. They don't need to be foundational pieces, or they do. But this kind of feels like the year where you want to find that out about as many of the guys as you can. Gorman, is going to be under contract. Walker's going to be under contract. But are these guys building blocks, or are they better served as trade pieces, or are they better served as let's just lower our expectations, temper them a little bit for what we might get out of these players, even if they're going to be around. Alec Burleson, what does he become? Lars Nootbaar, can he be can he be a building block cornerstone piece like I believe they've always envisioned, but they haven't seen it for 150 games in a year, so it's hard to kind of push your chips in on that. A lot of questions, very position player heavy with a lot of these questions, but a year from now, has Quinn Matthews emerged? I meant to get the video up of his long toss. I took a longer video of him doing long toss. I'm going to put it up on the channel, but this has to come first. I'll schedule the Quinn Matthews and Ivan Herrera stuff for 6 a.m. or something, just so that we have it. I don't make a liar out of myself because I put at the end of the last Sights and Sounds video that's what I was going to do. But the Cardinals have all of these conversations and all these things they're trying to figure out. Arenado being around makes it really hard to do those things with those position players. From Gorman to Donovan to Nootbaar to Walker to Herrera to Burleson. All those guys would be impacted. Everybody but Donovan. Donovan would still play every day. He would just probably play more left field than second. But then it's Siani, Victor Scott. I mean, do the Cardinals try to force feed Nootbaar into center field, whereas they otherwise might not have been inclined to do it? But they feel like they just have to be able to fit Burleson's bat in the lineup. But they probably don't want to play Burleson in the outfield. So is Burleson going to DH? It's just the trickle down is biblical in its proportion. So that is why Arenado, I think, fits better for what the Cardinals are trying to do this year on another team. Because, again, if you were trying to win as your utmost goal from an ownership perspective, because, again, front office still wants to win. Mo even said today, I came in with the same goals. We want to win a lot of baseball games. Didn't want to put a World Series, didn't want to put a division on it, win a lot of games. And that's always been the goal, right? People nitpick about what the goals is, and that's fine. But that's still what, at a front office level, they want to do, even if the moves that they're being forced by ownership to make that more difficult. Like, payroll being lower means it's probably more difficult to get the pieces you need to be able to get the roster up and over the hump. That's fair. But that doesn't mean that the players and the staff and the everybody involved, heck, even ownership would probably like to win. We just have to realize at a certain point they're making moves that are going to make that a little bit tougher to be able to accomplish this year. But I think if that's the way that you're going to approach it from a payroll standpoint, to kind of open up these windows of opportunities for younger players, that it becomes all the more important that the Arenado move gets done, because you're not maximizing wins as the utmost priority. You're setting the foundation for future years. And as much as Arenado, is still, I think, a good player, and I think he's still in his prime. I think we're going to see wherever he goes, even if it's in St. Louis, I think he'll have success in 2025. I think he'll have a bounce back season. But like, he's not part of the 5-year plan, right? He's only got 3 years left on the deal. And, if his numbers kind of don't go back to MVP candidate level like they were in 2022, then, you probably end up moving on from him at the end of the contract anyway. So it just gets to a point where it makes sense to do it now. I think there's going to be an opportunity to do it now. We'll see. Yankees, Dodgers. I'm sure Mike Schultz would still like to have him. We'll see if the Padres become a possibility, but I suspect they won't. Although they did just sign Nick Pivetta today to a decent-sized contract, like $44 million. But it's a little bit strange because their ownership situation is dicey right now. Their owner passed away, and so his kids are involved in the situation, and we kind of thought they weren't going to be able to spend, but they just signed Nick Pivetta. So even a team that's going through something like that is still finding ways to sign a 4-year, $44 million contract or whatever it was for Nick Pivetta. So, but I don't know if it's going to be possible for them to look the Arenado direction. But between the Yankees, who now should be motivated, right? Because for a while it was, well, if you're the Yankees and you don't want to allow the Red Sox to get any better, maybe you try to poke around on the Arenado thing. But they signed Bregman, so now it's like, if you're the Yankees, you almost want to match it, right? Cardinals maybe could benefit from the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry. Anything you can do, I can do better. Go get Arenado and prove that the Red Sox got the wrong guy. That can be the way that the Yankees approach it. And if not, you come crawling back to the Dodgers and you say, you're ending up with Arenado. You fill in the blanks on how this is going to work. And that's when the Dodgers know, all right, we'll get reasonable, but we're going to make sure we get this guy. Cardinals are desperate. They're going to pay down this contract more than they want to, but we're going to get him. We're going to take him. We're going to have an affordable deal on him, and we're probably not going to pay a lot in player capital to get him. One of those two things I think ends up happening, because if Arenado comes to camp, Mosaic said we're all adults, we're all grown-ups, we can all kind of handle the emotional ramifications. He said there'd be a little bit of awkwardness, I'm sure, but you get over it. But we don't know, because we haven't heard from Arenado yet throughout this entire process. I speculated that he didn't really necessarily feel a desperation to leave the Cardinals because he turned down Houston. If you were desperate, you would take a deal that was on the table. But maybe they're playing hardball and saying, I want to end up with the best situation. Joel Wolf is saying, I want to end up with the best situation for my client, and I'm going to make it happen. Now is where the push comes to shove, because the Red Sox are off the board, and Cardinals players, position players, have to report in just a few days. So let me know, Cardinals fans, your thoughts on all of this going on. I regret not being able to talk more about specifics from camp today. Questions in the comment section always help kind of guide my future episodes. If there's stuff from camp y'all want to know, but I am putting the Sights and Sounds series together, so please do go check out those videos as they come out. I put the whole Mosaic interview up, his availability from this morning. It's drinking from a fire hose when you're down here in Jupiter. So I apologize if it's a little disjointed sometimes, but I'm going to try to get you a podcast every single day that I'm down here, and other YouTube videos, Sights and Sounds, all kinds of content. Obviously, the announcement about Sports Hub STL is now live. That is something I'll be involved with too. So you'll be getting daily live shows pertaining to Cardinals baseball during the season. Post-game shows is something we're really excited about doing over at Sports Hub. So get involved in that, but my YouTube's not going anywhere. Charlie Marlowe's YouTube is going to kind of turn into Sports Hub if you guys follow him. So all that stuff that's going to be going on. But as far as this channel is concerned, we're still hitting the ground running for 2025. Yes, I haven't even got to talk about my little mishap yesterday when my car died on the highway 20 miles from Jupiter. So there's been a lot going on. It's been crazy, but a lot of great feedback on YouTube as well. So thank you guys so much for listening and for being a part of this. Help me out. Join the YouTube channel membership. That link is in the description to this video. If you like our content, that is a great way to help out the channel, help out me, help out the work we're doing. And make sure you turn around and support Sports Hub when the time comes too. All right. I'm tapping out. This is not going to be the best ending to a podcast you've ever heard, but I'm waving the white flag on this day. It's almost midnight. We're going to get this thing done. Mizzou basketball just beat Oklahoma, so that's pretty sick. At least I don't have to worry about that today. All right, guys. Let me hear from you in the comments. What are your thoughts? Sound off. I can feel it. It's in the air. Cardinals baseball's back. It doesn't feel like it normally does, but it's going to get there. I think we're going to get some normalcy here soon. With any luck, this Arenado thing gets resolved one way or another in the next few days. And we'll be here to talk about it when it happens. All right. Anything else, just let me know. Stuff you guys want to know or see from Jupiter, I'll try to make it happen. Appreciate y'all. This has been B-Schaeff Daily, episode 1 of season 5, episode 716 all time, whatever it is. That'll do it. I'm just going to say the word now. Peace.